And we are live with the Illustrated Enterprise. And Heather, my guest, is distracted because at the last minute we were figuring out how to stream to your audiences. Welcome. Welcome.
Hey, welcome. Thank you for having me.
I have been so looking forward to this.
Me too.
We have a slight echo, but let's see how it goes. Audience, let us know about the echo, because Heather, you may have to don your headset or play around with your audio settings there.
Oh, okay.
So do you have a headset handy just in case?
Probably.
Sorry, folks. Tech difficulties. So anyway, we're here today.
I don't have one,
okay.
But I can.
Well, let's see how it goes. It seems like it's a little better now. So anyway, audience, you let us know if the echo gets to be a little tough for you, and we'll try to brainstorm. So anyway, the reason we're here is because for many years I've been going to CCE. And Ray, which by the way, CCE is, I think, one of the best enterprise events you could possibly go to. And, Constellation doesn't pay me any money to say that, by the way. That's just how I feel. But anyhow, so I'll go to these events and I'll do my little panel thing because, oh, hey, Thomas, there's only echo when I'm speaking. That's awesome. Yeah. But the thing is, I can't really fix it on my side because I got my headphones on. So, Thomas, keep us posted on how bad the echo is. Okay. Thank you. Anyway, so what happens is I'll go and I'll do my panel. Ray pulls me in, and then I run out to see what you've done because you're the one that's scribbling on the side of the stage, and it's really cool.
That's my professional title, scribbler.
Yeah, but they look really cool, and we're going to do some show and tell today about all of this, but this was the one on... Okay, Sam says the echo is pretty bad. All right, so Heather, what you're going to have to do, I think, is log out and come back in.
Okay.
And if you get a chance and you have an alternative audio output of any kind, then try it. But if not, let's just see if changing your login or your browser works, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
All right, see you in a sec. Sorry, folks, tech difficulties. The irony of the whole thing, of course, is that during our sound check, everything was fine. So welcome to Live Without a Net and the Enterprise. How are we doing today, Sam and Thomas? Thank you for the feedback. Yeah, audible, but we got to at least try to do a little better. Yeah, it's certainly working when I'm solo, right? So yeah. Anyhow, so we are here on a Friday. We're going to be talking about the Illustrated Enterprise with Heather. And just so you know, what I want to get into in this next hour is how can we make live events better? How does this kind of visual storytelling make a difference? And also, what is the impact of AI in all of this, right? Because, Heather is arguably in a profession that's taking the hit of AI head on. But also, there's some really interesting things you can do with AI in this context also. So I think Heather and I at the Constellation event had a really good talk about the future of AI in the illustrated context. And here we go. I got some experienced video people in the chat. Sandbox is not live 100%. I mean, we see it all the time. Oh my God, how many demos have we seen at events where they assure us that the Wi-Fi and everything was perfect, like in the dress rehearsal? There's something about that live experience that really drills it. So anyhow, what can you do? But anyhow, just wait for a couple minutes, because I'm one of those people that doesn't believe in toughing out poor sound. At least we're going to try. So we're going to try something different, see how it goes. And Heather is back. So let's see what happens.
All right.
Heather, welcome back.
Thank you for welcoming me back. I have my ear pods on.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I think we are good. Woohoo.
Great.
Thanks. I was just kind of giving an overall context of what we're going to talk about, and we were having a little bit of fun talking about how Sandbox and testing, everything's not perfect till we went live. So you got to love that.
every time.
So anyway, this is one of the panels that Ray wrote me into doing at CCE, and as you can see, it was about building the 2025 budget. Anyhow,
Yeah.
one of my favorite things at this event is going there and immediately grabbing a photo of your work, and so for each one, and you have a huge collection from that event. Here's another one that I did with Doug Henshin and team on mastering data to decisions. Now, one thing I really want to get across. Oh, thanks, Caroline. I'm glad this is much better now.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So one thing I really want to get across too for folks is these are lightning round presentations, right, Heather? Because so this one, for example, I think was 20 minutes. So you basically have to be on your game because you can't fall behind. So
yeah, well, maybe we should. I'm not sure if everybody in the audience is familiar with visual storytelling or graphic facilitation, graphic recording, but how John and I know each other is through the conference technology communication scene, right? And so the graphic recording work that I've been doing with John on stage is that when there's conversations on stage, our team, Two Line Studios, is off to the side with a giant whiteboard, blank canvas. And what we're doing is we're listening to the conversations and we're drawing what's being said in real time. So if it is a 20-minute session, we are intensively listening and capturing as much as we can in those 20 minutes. If it's an hour or sometimes a day-long session, we're still listening and capturing that, the key ideas to help synthesize the information, make it more memorable, and then give somebody a tangible takeaway.
Right. I think we have
you always do.
Well, I think we have a photo too of one. Yeah, this is a good one, right? Of like one of your team members in action there. And yeah, so I think that's one of the fascinating things is you're literally trying to contextualize the experience. In this case, for enterprise attendees, though, you do other stuff besides the enterprise, which we're going to get into. And then I think pretty soon we have a cool picture of like people talking around it. Okay. Ray found his way into my show. The ubiquitous Ray Wong. Okay, so that's fun, right? Because a backdrop, but this is the picture I really liked. Okay, that's just more from Constellation. Let me just find the one. This one. Okay. I love that, right? Like, look at everyone kind of engaging with those, with the topics at hand like that. I mean, to me, that's such a cool thing because so often at events, it just feels like we're passive experiences of keynotes. We kind of sit on our asses for a while and then maybe we get some coffee and, wait in line for a session. It's just, you guys probably know this by now, but my view of the enterprise is that live events are pretty much broken and that they need radical change. And to me, this is part of that change, right? Is that this is the kind of scene I want to see, right? Mm-hmm. People talking together informally about the content and your ability to contextualize that illustration, I think is really, really cool. So anyhow, but maybe we should provide just a little more background because I kind of rushed ahead a little bit just to show people that. But in general, sort of what is your passion behind all this? What are you hoping to accomplish? Let's just start with the enterprise part of it, and then we can get into some other stuff. But what are you trying to do? What drives your team? What is your goal?
Well, what drives me is helping people to get more connected. And I really believe that creativity is the way that we connect back to our hearts. And when we bring that into business, that's where we can really create an impact. So whether we're, and I really love that in my life, I've had the opportunity to bring creativity and art making into a place where it didn't really exist when I started, like in the corporate workspace. And helping people to feel seen and to helping them feel understood and to crystallize ideas and help things to be more understood. I've just seen people come back to life. You know how you go into these meetings, maybe these conferences that you're talking about, and people just kind of look a little dead inside,
Mm.
because we're doing the thing that we feel like we have to do. But I want my work and the work that we do at Two Line to help wake up that creative spark that really drives impact in people and helps them find meaning in the work that they do. So that's what drives me, is giving people a creative outlet to find more impact and meaning in the work that they do. And the way that we do it is, with the visual note taking is a really big thing, a big part of what we do.
Yeah, and I can imagine quite a journey there in terms of figuring out how to get enterprises and enterprise vendors like on board with that. Can you share a little bit about like some moments where kind of light bulbs go off for people where they kind of see the power of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been really lucky in my career to work with, I've met Ray very early in my career, probably in the first year or two. We were working at doing graphic recording at an IBM conference. And he was like, we want you to be at our conference. I'm like, okay, so kind of brought that way. But where I've seen the light go off for people is when folks need to align around a common idea, or they're doing a lot of strategy work, or that there's a lot of conflict and tension in a business meeting or in a collaboration session. And energy might be high, voices might be raised, but I've drawn out what was being said in the room, capturing all sides of the story. And I've heard the volume of the room go down. I've heard people say, I know you understood what I said because she wrote it down. And so when there's that kind of alignment and when two different sides come together to see a different perspective, I think that's really valuable. That's one time that I've seen that happen. But it's also like when people start to put an image to their vision, or they start to visually articulate what they're seeing for the future, and they're able to get people to come along with them on the journey. And you're actually able to visually map out what the different steps are to get to that goal. And what we're doing, we're capturing everything that's being said. We're capturing the jokes. We're capturing, the comments that are said when no one thinks that they're being heard. We're listening, and we're integrating all of these like real life stories into this journey so people see themselves in the work. And I think the image that you were reacting to so strongly with people like integrating and arguing and trying to figure out the problem, it's because that's what we're doing, as we are reflecting them and their story and their journey and their what they're passionate about and the actions that they need to take to reach the common goal in that image.
There's a couple of points I want to make around this, and we also have another one of your fans, Brent Leary, is here.
Hey, Brent!
Looking forward to having you in Atlanta for their CRM Players event. Brent, by the way, I'm going to be pinging you on some logistics on that, but I'm actually, Brian Summer and I are doing a session there, so you may get a chance to attempt to illustrate one of my sessions again.
I saw that yesterday.
But two really cool things. One thing I wanted to mention is I think the jugular immediacy of doing something while it's happening, while it's probably challenging for your team, like I think that's really important. And especially I think it creates an inclusiveness around events, because one of my beefs with enterprise events is not just that they need reinvention, but they tend to be very non-inclusive. So in other words, there's this mentality that if you're not at the event, you're nobody, you don't matter. And I had one vendor tell me like, we're not doing this virtual stuff because our community's all here. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Do you realize how many people struggle with budgets and have to choose between team members and leave people out? Do you have any idea how many people are caught up in various travel restrictions for whatever reason in their lives? And I think the ability to share these kinds of things on social channels, and I've seen your stuff get shared like that, is so cool, because it's like, it gives you a little bit of that flavor of like you were there. So I think that's another really key point, is the shareable nature of that and how quickly it can come out,
Absolutely. And we're going to be doing several big events this year. I'm very excited to be doing a lot more conferences this year. But that is one of the key points, is not only the inclusivity of like helping people feel like they are at the event and having the same content and same conversations being shared, but also from an inclusive uh, point, is that it also is another way to help people learn. And I think you and I have had that conversation, in the hallways at the CCE. Like, you can only take so much sitting in a room and listening to people talk from a stage. At a certain point, you have to go out and learn or relearn or revisit the content from another perspective. And I think that that's something that's very valuable about the visual storytelling, is that we're showing the content from a visual perspective and a different angle than just the auditory deluge of information.
The other thing, I want to tease the AI section of this talk. I don't want to get into that too much yet, but I do want to say that that's one of my biggest concerns when people see me having a bit of a chip on my shoulder about AI. One of my issues is repressing and supplanting human creativity, when in fact it's such a struggle for humans to be authentically creative in the current context already. And creating tools that essentially smother the process of discovering your own voice, I'm really opposed to. Now, that's not always the case in AI, because there are times where AI can actually enable that. So it's not that the tool is always a bad thing, but there's such an infatuation with like, this does your creativity for you. And it's like, I'm sorry, but no one can find your voice but yourself. And the process of finding that in a corporate context is really important. And I think a lot of people don't get that opportunity. Like you said, they kind of show up at these shows and they go through the motions. And I sit down to lunch with a lot of these people just randomly to see how they're doing. And they're kind of heads down. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're kind of like, oh, I got to do this. I got to get to this session. And I'm like, man, like, we don't get together that often. Like, where's the magic? Like, where's this moment of connection? Like, can we find that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the heart of why we get together, right? It's for that.
I'd like to think so.
That's what I value.
Yeah.
And I always love that about like catching up with you in different ways at the conferences. But yeah, hopefully, like, having all, like, the image that you showed of all the boards in a row, like, that's a way that people can be part of the conversation on the stage. And then they can also build on it. They can build their own ideas, ask questions. Sometimes I talk about these as like these visual icebreakers. So people can come out and say, hey, were you in this fireside chat? What did they mean by building skills? Like, so it can spark conversations and help that connection that can happen outside of the auditorium.
Can I ask you, Heather, you said something earlier that I wanted to get back to because I thought it was fascinating and it hadn't occurred to me. You talked about doing graphic recordings during a session where there would be conflict. That sounds really challenging and interesting. How would you handle something like that?
It's the same way that we handle things when it is flowing very smoothly, or it's like a beautiful keynote that's been practiced and I've done the same conversation 100 times. We are there, like, whether we are in the middle of conflict or, these really high tension points, or it's something that's smooth sailing, we're listening to the conversation. We're articulating and writing out, synthesizing the key idea. And then we're giving an image to kind of support the emotion that's supporting that concept. So we're always listening. We're always just listening. And my job is to help people feel understood.
That's interesting. I'm trying to think of how I would move through a team conflict in a visual way, but it's a really appealing concept to me.
Yeah, well,
never really thought about that before.
Think about two sides of a mind map, right? Or like, think about a mind map where you have the central idea in the middle, and then you have two different branches going out. on one brand, let's say I use this as an example often, like say we're talking about the color purple, you know, and like purple is the subject. We're going to talk about purple. And one side is like, well, it's blue and red. Blue and red combined together, that makes purple. And the other side's like, no, 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 it's not blue and red. It's red and blue. See, it's clearly red and blue. And then you draw it up, or maybe you just use colors to like symbolize what they've said. And they're able to see, oh, we're actually talking about the same thing. It's just two different sides of the coin. So it's
you might be able to, you could like illustrate a common thread that might not be visible in just a verbal context, but if you saw it in an image, you would say, wow, we actually connect.
Or
that's really interesting.
Or literally sometimes we will draw a thread between two different concepts, and then suddenly people can see how it's part of that journey. And that's like one of the gifts I think that we bring, is that we are not invested in the politics. Like we're not tied up in the bureaucracy or whatever shenanigans are going on politically within the environment. We're clearly there to listen, to help people feel understood. And so we're bringing in a lot of different models that we've used. We're bringing in, listening in different ways. Sometimes we're listening for absolutes. Sometimes we're listening for tension. Sometimes we're listening for visual metaphors. So we're bringing in our tools of listening, really, and then helping reflect what's being said to make sense of it.
So let's do some more show and tell. I think one of the cool things when I looked at some of the projects you showed me last time we sat down is that you also do some pretty non-enterprise stuff and some nonprofit work. And to me, there's something interesting there because it seems like it kind of informs each other and influences each other. So shall we look through some of your projects here?
Sure.
All right. I'm going to maybe skip a couple of slides here. We can maybe go back to that if necessary, but so tell me to stop when you get to like a slide you want to talk about.
This is a great example. So this is a strategy map for one of my clients. And so to give a little bit of context, this is a nonprofit. They're quite a large nonprofit where their primary client is the government. And they had several different pillars underneath the umbrella of within the organization. So our team went in and we helped each individual pillar set their vision, so articulate where they were going, and then map out what that strategy plan was to get there. And I am by no means an expert in strategy planning, but I'm pretty good at asking questions to help people figure out what are those key milestones and big rocks, and then the actions that need to happen underneath it. So in this, what we're looking at right now is the final illustration that maps their journey from a couple of years ago. And what came before it was a strategy session where we did in this case, I think it was a half-day strategy session where we created a lot of the boards that looked similar to what you see at CCE. They're fast, they're kind of dirty, they kind of look like the handwriting that you have behind your head right now in your background. But that is purely there to capture that conversation. And let me tell you, in those conversations, they get heated because there is a lot going on and people feel vulnerable and they feel like their jobs are coming into question, or they question like the validity of their role, or like the impact and the value they have. So there's a lot of emotion that comes out in those conversations, but we're there to, unbiasedly map out what's being said. I've also been doing a lot of facilitation over the course of my career. And so then we help them to dive in and articulate what the key points are, and the big ideas that they need to communicate. And then at the end, the process, we take all of this information back to our studio and we do a couple more iterations. And that's a time for the clients to go in and articulate we're just do another iteration. Is this the right idea? Is this the concept that we need to follow? Like, is this the image that's really going to tell the story of why it's important and who's involved and who you're serving? So we're really taking like the company's values and their vision, and the strategy into conversation, along with what I mentioned earlier is like, at the top you have this train of thought. So that was just like a side conversation that was coming out. And we're like, that's a visual metaphor that we can use to anchor some of these important elements to the project.
Cool. If y'all have some questions for Heather about this, please post. I'm not sure if I lost my LinkedIn comment stream or not because it's not showing up here, but give it a go so I can test it out. Heather, what is your perception of a process like this? What was different for this group having this visual element culminating in this? Did you get some feedback on that?
Yeah. Well, this company I've been working with for several years. So the fact that they keep bringing me back means that it's working for them, which is good. Originally, I started working with this group because they had a lot of folks on their team where English wasn't the first language. They had a lot of folks on the ground and volunteers that were kind of first responders to disasters that didn't necessarily know the whole vision and values of the company. They didn't know like the behaviors that were, coming from the top down. And they felt that the visuals were a great way to start to share that information and kind of communicate what their values were and how they wanted people to act when they were on the ground. And they also started to use this work originally because not everybody that they were corresponding with had a computer. Like they might just have a cell phone or they might just have social media to communicate. So that's kind of where this project kicked off and why the visuals became a strong component for them. Now, going forward several years, they use this in their, twice a year, I'll come in and check in to say, like, are we still on track? Do these goals make sense? Does this need to be revised? How are we making progress? And then they also use these for their month. I don't know if they do monthly or weekly check-ins as well. So it's another tool to kind of like measure progress and clearly identify what they're going to be working on next.
So cool. I'm glad the comment stream's still going through and Carolyn is enjoying hearing about the process and seeing the visuals. So before we get into our AI part, let's do a little more show and tell on some scenarios. Do you want to do this one, or I don't know which ones you'd prefer to do?
Sure, we can talk about all these. This was another one where we were illustrating the values for this organization. And so, truth be told, this one was used in an awards ceremony. So they wanted to showcase their company values as they were honoring people who really excelled and did well within the organization were being rewarded for it.
I like this because if you just gave me a list of these values, I would just like pretty much like be like, oh my God, like real. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with them, but it's just kind of, there's a boilerplate aspect to that. But with the visual, you get a lot more personality for this organization.
That's right. This one is for, it was in the pharmaceutical industry, and this particular group was struggling and they needed to report to their leadership team the importance of getting some help and support for their division. And so they reached out to us and said, hey, we don't want to just present charts and graphs and, bar charts and pie charts and the spreadsheet to show that we need help. We want to actually capture their attention so they pay attention to us. So they presented their entire report out to the C-suite. I think they had like 10 or 15 minutes for their allotted time. And so they went through all of their stats of where they were at, but they had this visual in the background that kind of showed, hey, we're doing the best we can to dock to get docked, but we're really sinking here.
Yeah, I really like this aspect of like how we tell better stories in the enterprise. And that's one thing that comes up a whole lot in the analytics areas that I get into is like we have a lot of data. Sometimes with our modern tools, we have much better data, but we're still not succeeding in telling the proper story around that data for executives to wrap their heads around. And, you know, just different ways of presenting that I think is so potent. And I really like this concept because how many bar charts can you show someone, you know?
I know.
Caroline has a question for you. Have you seen live visual narratives effectively used to showcase the benefits of technical solutions like SAP ERP software? And if so, what made them successful?
We have worked with a lot. I've worked with SAP quite a bit in the past and have done a lot of their showcases at Sapphire over the years. I think answering it on a high level, like we're good at showing a journey. And I don't think I have like specifically a journey map in here, but it's kind of like you're able to show what's being happen and then articulate why it's important. And you can kind of show this flow or this path.
Mm.
Do you think that answers the question? I'm not sure if that really answers it, but
yeah,
we do a lot of journey maps.
So I think this is interesting because it all depends on how you want to tell the story. I know quite a bit about Carolyn because she represents SAP customers through ASUG members user group, and so in North America, so they want to be able to tell these more customer focused journey narratives and also help customers to understand what the transitions look like when you adopt new software from, say, SAP. So I think it's interesting to think about that in that context where, like you said, maybe like illustrating a product map might not be very interesting, but telling a story of what it was like to adopt that product and move through the change involved, that could be a pretty cool way of doing it, maybe.
Right. And I think we have an image in a slide or two that kind of shows, oh, this is exactly it that I was thinking about. Doesn't do exactly what I was thinking, but is showing like a before and after, so in this one, this is more almost like a comic, but we're really showing different phases of, in this case, it's a career, but it could certainly be a project. It's like a case study, right? So in this first panel is, this is a story of an executive at Target Corporation who knew that he wanted to take on more responsibility and progress in his career and was feeling kind of stuck. So that was kind of the challenge, was like, how do I advance my career and also mentor and communicate and teach my team based off of the values that I know and love and have gained in my past. So in the first panel, it looks at, what he was coming from. And then last panel is where he wanted to go. Mm-hmm. And then in the middle was kind of like that career journey that bridged those two scenarios, obviously. And so I think that you can do that with case studies with client work as well. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, it does matter what the content is, but the point is it can be applied to anything. It can be applied to personal things like your story of how you relate to your grandmother and your family and how it teaches you the values that you hold and carry throughout your entire life. It can apply to, different phases and steps of a project, like in the middle where we're talking about a career and a resume. And then what are those stories that impact it? And then you can also map it out for, reaching that pinnacle of the current state and the future state and those milestones mapping back. And what I love about this particular example is that every single element in this 3-panel drawing has a story. So like the pin on his grandmother's lapel has a story. You see that same bird flying over the clouds in the last panel. The broom has a story about dedication and progress. So it's just you can really start to develop a rich narrative with the visuals that you're not able to do in a with text on a PowerPoint slide or in a spreadsheet.
That's interesting. It's almost like you could talk around these slides for like 30 minutes because of all the details that you might not see at first glance that are actually pretty important. Hey, Carolyn, I wanted to go back to your comment here because, and if you remind me to ping me later on LinkedIn, I think I can send you one on this. I think I saw one on LinkedIn that was sort of a well illustrated sort of benefit slide for, I think it might have been SAP Cloud stuff. The problem that I had with it actually looked really good. The problem that I had with it, Carolyn, in this case was I felt it was a little too promotional. Like it felt a little bit inauthentic, I guess is what I would say about it. And it felt a little forced. And so I think what's interesting is that while visual can be attractive and different, it can still run into the same problems of enterprise buzzword speak. Like I saw a lot of buzzwords on the slide and I didn't see a whole lot of acknowledgement of the obstacles and challenges to reaching these goals, which is why I'm personally fascinated by telling good stories, because good stories have moments of conflict and doubt and struggle and turmoil. They're not just fairy tales, right? And you know, they're meatier than that. And so to me, those are the kind of stories that resonate. You know, you're welcome to comment on that if you like, Heather, but
I agree with you. And, you know, even in this particular example that we have up, it's riddled with content or a conflict all the way through, but there's a resolution that happens at the end. And one of the models that we look at often is like the hero's journey. You know, it's a way of mapping and marking storytelling.
So Carolyn says, thanks. She's helped in understanding how she could apply this to a complex and technical talk like SAP, and we can talk about that more offline. Let's see. Maybe I want to get to our AI discussion, but maybe we can do one more. I don't remember how many show and tell slides we have left. So
I think that might be the last one.
Okay, so let's do this one.
This was a conversation I was invited into actually after our conversation that you and I had at CCE. I was chatting with, or I was on a panel with the Value Web and the community of facilitators there. And so we were discussing, you know, what is the future of AI, or how do we use AI in the work that we do? Considering that's very creative, we're also a very collaborative community of facilitators and really like to get people involved. So we were looking at how does AI come into play there. So one of the conversations that you and I had was about my team and like the graphic recorders that collaborate and work with me at Two Line Studios, and how we were feeling we started to have monthly meetings about AI. And it started around some of the emotional things that we were just, you know, thinking and feeling about AI. We were talking about ethics. We were feeling, you know, questioning. And when I say we, it was like I think we had a group of 10 people. We're thinking about like, is this a threat or is this something that we can use to our benefit? We're looking at our clients having different legal concerns. Like it's fabulous to take the boards at the end of an event, bring it into the AI, say, hey, can you type up all of the text on this board for me, and then create a summary over it? It's great. Or like, take all of this data from these flip charts and make a spreadsheet for me so I can understand it in a different way. It's fantastic, but then we're concerned, like, is this something that's going to breach confidence with our clients? So there's hesitation around that. Then we started looking at, you know, over the different months. Then another month we had talked about how does this help us in the niche work that we do? How can we use this as a thought partner? Bringing in different problem solving, and then also like looking at the tools. So that was kind of like part of the conversation that I was able to bring in from the group of folks that I'm lucky to work with.
Yeah, we had a really good conversation at Constellation about the impact of AI and all of this. And Thomas, I'm not 100% clear on, I know you want Heather to chime in on something, but you're going to need to maybe restate what you want, because I don't want to take a stab at it, but go ahead and redo that. Same thing with Sam. There may be some back channel humor going on for part of that. But yeah, I thought it was really, really potent, because obviously, if I can put on my like John Reed goes on a rant thing for a sec, like I do think what's happened to a lot of professional illustrators and designers is highly unethical and unfair. They had almost no notice, and a lot of their proprietary work they spent decades on was consumed by these systems and then turned out without any form of compensation or acknowledgement or attribution. So let's just put that out there and just say that was basically robber baron Wild West shit. Okay.
Yeah, we have people on our team who are like, who are doing more technical drawing that their business completely dried up.
Yeah. So that's just got to be sort of said and put out there. So now that that's on the record, now we sort of step into like, let's put some of the liability and copyright and the pending stuff around that aside for a little bit. And the fact that there is a fair amount of job displacement happening, but then there's also, I think, some level of clarity that these skills and talents are still going to have relevance. And in fact, like, then you get into the kind of conversations that I have with my Diginomica colleagues about the writing side of this world and the analysis side, where we are using AI for certain things, but then not for others, right? And so we kind of come up with our own mix of that, where it becomes sort of an ally and not something to be feared necessarily, but something to experiment with and integrate into different workflows to try to be better, right? Because the problem was never resisting technology for its own sake for most people. It was that they wanted to do it a little more on their own terms in such a way that was authentic to what they were trying to express in the world, not something that would, take away their livelihood. And then they're like, what do I do? Right. So.
Right. So are you asking a question?
Well, not really. I'm kind of like sort of just sort of riffing at the moment. So where does this go? Like, will you use AI for certain things? Will you use it for some illustration techniques also? Will you draw certain lines in the sand in terms of what you don't want it to do, or how will you think about all of this?
Well, I'll start out saying one of the messages I remember from my dad growing up that he taught me was that, remember, you're always replaceable. And as a teenager, that would make me very angry. But it's something that I embraced, it's just like, okay, if I'm always going to be replaceable, then I always need to be learning and developing new skills and using new tools. Thank you for putting the ethical part out there first, because I want all artists to maintain their jobs, right? But there's also a reality of life that, we don't use Kodak film as much anymore, do we? Because the digital camera came along, and so we learned to adapt and to use these tools. So that's kind of where my perspective is right now, is like, how do we use these tools to be a thought partner? How do we use these tools to challenge us as artists to think differently? While also, to your point earlier, it's just like maintaining that authenticity, maintaining our own creative voice. So right now at first I was like, oh shoot, like this is going to eat up my job, because it's pretty darn good at synthesizing information.
Yeah.
And the visuals are not, I mean, they're not what we do, but they're not horrible. You know, you can use them to get the ideas across, but at least right now you still need to have prompt engineers. Like you need to be able to be smart enough to ask good questions. You need to be able to bring in, like, you know, where if you look at the upper right hand corner of the, or upper left hand corner of the left image, it's like, what is our niche as humans? You know, we are coming in and we are bringing in the compassion. Like, we're there to be a problem solver. We're there to reflect what's going on in the room and help people see things from different perspectives. And I'd like to argue that human beings have a different presence than the AI does, in terms of like being a thought partner and looking at kind of those soft skills of creativity.
Yeah, and I want to get to some of the questions in the chat that are percolating. Okay. But one thing I'll just kind of say about all of this is I think that I'll start posting them in, and we'll get to them.
Hadn't clicked on the comments. I'm glad that I didn't, because I would be distracted.
Yeah. You don't have to worry about that. I'll handle the comment stream. The one thing I would say is that I think I would like to believe that there's, at least for the foreseeable future, there's going to be an element of this sort of authentic human expression that is really, really difficult for machines to capture. So they're actually, I think, going to get quite good at the technicals of the visuals. Yeah. But those things, for example, around, like, you described the scenario in a meeting of trying to capture conflict. Like, AI is going to suck at that. If I'm moderating
all the nuances of, like,
exactly,
you know, facial expressions, body language.
Yeah.
I mean,
because
it'll be there, but not right now.
Right, because at the moment, that's not what these systems are good for. They're really good at things like pattern recognition and summarization.
Yeah.
And that works for a lot of things, but it doesn't work for, like, a subtle visual cue. So, for example, you think about a meeting summary, and sometimes, like, a snarky comment at the end of the meeting by someone who's about to quit that project is actually the biggest thing, and the machine has no idea. So I think that's where we have to go, is to that higher ground of deeper human storytelling and more authentic humor, satire, snark, making things real. I think it challenges us to be more human, because if we're not, then I'm not sure we're that much better than AI at the moment in the visual arena. Okay, so I'm going to work back a little bit and catch up a little bit. Thomas said something around that he wrote to Carolyn, this type of live drawing probably works better in an educational video recording. I'm still not totally sure what you're getting at, Thomas, but do you understand, Heather?
I don't know about better, but we do do a lot of the animated explainer videos. So that, you know, when you see the hand that's drawing the thing, you know, to the TED Talk. So maybe, Thomas, like, if you have, I think we've seen him at different conferences, but there is an element of, like, the live drawing that can be very fascinating, and also holds attention during these type of talks and engagements. So it's another tool to bring in engagements, this kinetic learning that can happen. And the video processes that we do, they're quite different than the live visual capture. So it's with the video work, it's really helping organizations draw out, like, literally write out and draw out their story, but then finding a way to use the images to really even speak louder than the words that are being communicated.
Right. Sam's calling on the John Reed AI bot for help. Sam, if you still need help from John GPT, let me know. Carolyn had an interesting kind of two-parter. She says she could see AI tools being effective for complex topics like SAP because it has the background knowledge, understanding of things like acronyms. P+ have the SAP ecosystem like we don't know. I think I could see that, Carolyn. I think especially, again, it depends on what the goal is and how, sort of what your bar is. Like Hayam Park, the analyst friend of mine, friend of many people in the show, talks about instant mediocrity, which he doesn't really mean as an insult the way it sounds, but it's about this ability to produce at scale things that are maybe not as good as what a Heather could produce, but could maybe be a head start. Or I could also see providing illustrators with a lot of background content that they wouldn't have and say, go work with this. So it's interesting. I just think you have to be a little careful, because if the goal is to cut down the illustrator's budget by 90%, then I think that's something we have to be a little careful about, as far as trying to skim the cream off the top of the humans and say, hey, go figure out your rent somewhere else. I don't think that's necessarily the best outlook.
But here's the other thing is that, and it's kind of a touchy spot, right? So I'll just say how I've used AI to help scale and accelerate my work is, one, I will use it to help me understand this new thing in AI. And so, even going into one of the constellation events, I didn't know what some of the words were that were written in the questions that were going to be asked. So I used AI to help educate myself.
Which I think is a good example of what Carolyn was just talking about there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then other times we'll look at it and say okay, we want to find the best way for somebody to do this gesture. So I'll say give me 10 different examples of gestures with a hand. And so then I don't have to create that composition in my mind. I can that part of the process is accelerated because I can draw something that's already been created and improve upon it, rather than spend a lot of time generating that from scratch. Does that make sense? It's a research tool. So using it as a research tool.
Another good point from Carolyn: artists might be the ones that have insight, like Heather did, that sharing a journey will make for the best visual narrative. And I like I was saying, I would like to believe that there's someone on Heather's team that is deeply experienced in this and can really do that kind of deep listening from a human and their team around what they're struggling with and what they're trying to overcome. I don't think AI can really touch that in terms of rendering that authentically, but it's kind of interesting. I mean, I used AI animation to create a couple of holiday things for friends of mine using Steve AI. But I think what really made it work was that I provided all the text. And so the cheesy generative AI images were actually really funny because they were kind of cheesy and they played off the more sincere emotions from my pseudo poetic affections that I was trying to express to the people in my life that have made a difference. And that was really fun. And I couldn't have done that without AI. I could have, but it would have taken a long, long time. Let's face it, I can't spend 10 hours, on a Christmas card, as much as I would like to. Thomas, we actually did cover that in some detail. I think maybe your laptop might have died. I'm not sure. You're probably going to have to catch the replay on that because we spent about 10 minutes on that one. But if you do have a lingering question around that, but ultimately we did come to the conclusion that telling a story or a customer journey around that would probably be the most powerful way to illustrate the benefits, especially if that story had real obstacles and real barriers and real challenge, real change, real stakes. I can imagine a cartoon, for example, of IT people trying to communicate to business people what SAP is, and the business people going what the hell are you talking about? And that would be kind of the first stage of that is this communication gap. This came up a lot during the fall, is this sort of IT business gap, and how do you bridge it? And I think visuals would be fantastic for that. And, this is where AI can't help us, I don't think, because this is about finding humor in these more intricate dynamics and tension points between people. And AI can help render that if you tell it what to do, but it can't understand those dynamics yet. Someday, we can have a different conversation about AI than we're having right now. So anyhow, other questions and comments around AI and creativity for Heather. I'm not sure we were able to completely fix enterprise events, but I hope you all appreciate these kind of discussions, because to me, this is like what really gets me excited to go to in-person events, is to experience these kinds of things and, have these adventures and, and have this ongoing dialogue that you and I just ended up having in the kind of like this way of like, I want to see what Heather did with my talk. And then I can actually like talk with her and here we are. So.
What I love about the community that we have there is that we will give certain speakers, I will give what we call scribe challenges. So we'll come up with something absolutely ridiculous and like have them work it into the conversation on stage.
Yeah, I'll put up a picture of Ray again. Ray, you found a way to sneak into my video show. Nice job, dude.
Such enthusiasm for it.
Yeah, so pretty soon you should have some fresh work from the CRM Players event, which some of the people in the chat are going to be at as well. So that should be really fun.
In a couple of weeks, we just had our planning call for it yesterday.
Thomas, I wondered why you went a little quiet there. Now I know. Wow. No redundancies in the household, huh? I'll have to send you one of my old Windows 10 machines just so you have one just in case your battery dies next time. Let me know if you want one. I moved from Windows to Mac recently in a dramatic way because
congratulations!
I took a stand against Windows 11, like a hard stand. So
we have literally a stack of old Mac laptops in the other room. Like, how do we have a whole bin of laptops? This is obscene.
It's crazy. So any final questions for Heather, please post them. This was really enjoyable for me because one of my highlights was kind of seeing some of your other projects. And so it's cool to kind of run through those. And, I wish I had this visual element. Like in the ideal world, I would have something like this for every single thing that I wrote. Cause like I'm highly conscious of the fact that I'm very like text bound, and I also do podcasts and video, but I don't have the visual chops, and so but maybe someday we'll figure out how we can do that, at least for something that I've done, because I just love that. It's so cool to see.
Well, if you're familiar with Dan Rome, like he wrote the book Back of the Napkin, like back in the day, but it's all about how very simple images can express a big idea. And that's where like our name Two Line came, is like taking two lines to communicate something very clearly. So it doesn't have to be beautiful and big and gorgeous and skillful. It can be literally a squiggle and another line. Can be two lines to communicate your idea. Yeah.
And probably with some practice, I could like do a little more with it than I do. So
we'll have to do a drawing class together.
Yeah, exactly. I probably need to do that because I'm definitely very texty. I was up till 6 a.m. writing about AI mistakes, and it was all text, like
my God.
No pictures. Because if I'd written pictures, I would have stayed up till 7 a.m. and then probably would have slept through our show today. So,
wow.
So look forward to seeing you and some of our audience members in just a little while. Thanks for this excellent show, and to be continued.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for the comments, and see you soon.
Really enjoyed that. Take care.